The biggest question hovering over the Pittsburgh Steelers right now isn't about the draft. It isn't about free agency in general, and it's not even about the defense. It's about one man, one decision, and a ticking clock that's getting louder by the day. According to ESPN insider Adam Schefter, the belief around the league is that Aaron Rodgers is expected to make his decision about the 2026 season by mid-March, and that timeline changes everything for Pittsburgh. Let's break this down carefully, because there's a lot layered into this situation. Schefter made it clear that when it comes to Rodgers, there are no absolutes. Things can shift quickly, but the expectation circulating around the NFL is that an answer is coming by mid-March. That timing is crucial because the legal tampering period begins March 9th and free agency officially opens March 11th. If Rodgers is going to return to the Steelers, the organization needs clarity before the quarterback carousel starts spinning at full speed. Now, it's important to note that anything Schefter reports regarding Rodgers is not sourced directly from people close to Rodgers himself. The information likely comes from league or team sources, and there's been skepticism about Schefter's sourcing when it comes to Pittsburgh in the past. So while this update is significant, it still needs to be taken with a measured perspective. That said, there's alignment between this report and what Steelers leadership has been signaling. The message from the organization is clear. This will not drag into June. The Steelers are not going to sit around all off-season waiting. There will be a deadline. And if Rodgers hasn't made a decision by a certain point in March, Pittsburgh is prepared to pivot. The interesting wrinkle here is Minnesota. Schefter brought up the Vikings as a potential surprise destination if Rodgers doesn't return to Pittsburgh. Last year, Rodgers reportedly had interest in Minnesota, but the Vikings were protective of J.J. McCarthy. The question now is whether that stance has changed. Rodgers has a relationship with Kevin O'Connell. Minnesota has elite weapons like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. On paper, you can see the appeal. But here's where continuity becomes central to this conversation. Rodgers himself talked late last season about how important familiarity is in an offense. He referenced his first year with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay compared to year 2, when he elevated his play significantly after adjustments and deeper comfort in the system. That insight matters, because if Rodgers truly values continuity, starting over again with a brand new team, new terminology, new locker room chemistry doesn't necessarily align with that philosophy. In Pittsburgh, he already has established chemistry. He's played with DK Metcalf. He's connected with Darnell Washington, Pat Freiermuth, and Jaylen Warren. There's familiarity in the building, there's comfort, and by all accounts, he enjoyed his time in Pittsburgh. He embraced the city, he embraced the locker room. That matters for a 43-year-old quarterback evaluating whether he wants one more run. Reports from Tom Pelissero on The Rich Eisen Show echoed the idea that if Rodgers plays in 2026, it's likely in Pittsburgh. The momentum appears to be trending toward either Steelers or retirement. Not a third-team reset, not a cross-conference gamble, Steelers or walk away. But the Steelers cannot operate on emotion alone. They need contingency plans. And that's where this gets even more fascinating. If Rodgers retires or chooses another path, Pittsburgh's Plan B conversation becomes very real. Malik Willis has emerged as one of the most intriguing alternatives on the market. According to Jordan Schultz, teams expect Willis to command at least $30 million per year in free agency. That number initially sounds shocking, especially for a quarterback with only 6 career starts. But context is everything. This is a weak quarterback market. There aren't many young, tradable, potential long-term starters available. Willis flashed serious upside with Green Bay, particularly in games against the Bears and Ravens, where his efficiency and playmaking stood out. Teams see dynamic athleticism. They see arm talent. They see upside in a league starving for quarterback solutions. And while $30 million per year feels steep, that figure would place him around 20th among NFL quarterbacks in annual salary. With upcoming extensions likely pushing others higher, that contract could quickly look middle-tier. The Steelers could structure a 2-year $60 million deal with limited guarantees beyond year 1. If it works, they've found their next franchise quarterback. If it doesn't, they pivot in 2027 with minimal long-term damage. Then there's the bridge option tier. If Rodgers retires and Willis signs elsewhere, Pittsburgh could explore veterans like Andy Dalton. Schefter reported that Carolina has been receiving calls about Dalton at 38 years old and nearly 170 career starts. Dalton represents experience and mentorship. He's served as a bridge quarterback before, working with younger players like Justin Fields and Bryce Young. He also has familiarity with Mike McCarthy from Dallas. However, acquiring Dalton likely costs a late day 3 pick, perhaps a 7th. And at that point, the Steelers would clearly be in transitional mode, possibly drafting a quarterback early and setting up a competition with Will Howard or another rookie. So the hierarchy becomes clear. Plan A, bring Rodgers back at a relatively affordable number and build around continuity. Plan B, Invest in Malik Willis as a calculated upside swing. Plan C. Secure a veteran bridge like Dalton and prepare for a rookie-led future. Every path carries risk. Every path reshapes the franchise's timeline. And now, everything hinges on mid-March. Will the Steelers have their answer before free agency officially begins, allowing them to act decisively? Or are we heading toward a high-stakes waiting game that could reshape the entire offseason strategy? What do you think happens? Does Aaron Rodgers return to Pittsburgh, or are we about to witness a major shift at quarterback in the Steel City? Because if we're being completely honest, this decision doesn't just affect the quarterback room, it affects the entire structure of the offseason. The draft strategy changes. Free agency priorities shift. Even the way Pittsburgh allocates cap space hinges on what Aaron Rodgers decides to do. If Rodgers commits by mid-March, the Steelers can approach free agency with clarity. They know they have a veteran quarterback who understands the offense, who has established chemistry, and who won't demand top-tier quarterback money. That financial flexibility matters. Bringing him back at a relatively modest number compared to the $30+ million range projected for Malik Willis allows Pittsburgh to strengthen other areas of the roster offensive line depth. Secondary reinforcements, rotational defensive pieces, continuity at quarterback would stabilize everything. But if that answer doesn't come in time, the Steelers cannot afford to freeze. The legal tampering period opens March 9th. Free agency begins March 11th. Other quarterback-needy teams won't hesitate. The Jets have cap space. The Cardinals and Dolphins have been mentioned as potential players in the quarterback market. Cleveland has shown interest in quarterback upgrades. Minnesota remains a wild card. There is far more demand than supply, and that's why Malik Willis's market is so aggressive. He's viewed as the only young, high-upside free agent quarterback with potential long-term starter traits. Teams are willing to gamble because the alternative is irrelevance at the position. If Pittsburgh waits too long and Willis signs elsewhere, their fallback tier shrinks quickly. Now let's talk about the ripple effect inside the building. If Rodgers returns, the Steelers can continue developing younger quarterbacks behind him without pressure to throw them into the fire. Will Howard remains a developmental piece. A potential rookie draft pick can sit and learn. The organization buys time. If Willis becomes the choice, the timeline accelerates. You're paying him to start. You're betting on upside. That becomes a 2-year evaluation window. If it hits, you extend him. If it misses, you reset in 2027. If it's a bridge veteran like Andy Dalton or someone in that tier, you're signaling transition. You're likely drafting a quarterback early. You're accepting short-term instability for long-term positioning. And here's something that can't be ignored. Rodgers himself emphasized how different year 2 in a system can be compared to year 1. He brought up his experience transitioning from his first season under Matt LaFleur to his second in Green Bay. When familiarity allowed him to elevate his level of play significantly, that comment wasn't random. It was intentional. It hinted at unfinished business. He's already comfortable in Pittsburgh. He knows the terminology. He understands the personnel. He has rapport with DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Jalen Warren. That foundation exists. Starting over in Minnesota, even with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, would require rebuilding timing, communication, trust. At age 43, does that align with what he wants? There's also the emotional element. Reports indicate he genuinely enjoyed his time in Pittsburgh. The city, the locker room, the culture, that matters. This isn't a quarterback chasing a massive contract. This is a future Hall of Famer evaluating legacy, comfort, and competitive opportunity. From the Steelers' perspective, they're drawing a line in the sand. This will not stretch into summer. They will wait, but not endlessly. If mid-March passes without a commitment, they pivot. That's the signal coming from the organization. So now the question becomes even sharper. If Rodgers gives Pittsburgh a firm answer before free agency opens and says he's back, the Steelers can move forward confidently. If he hesitates, the front office must decide how long is too long. Do they risk missing out on Malik Willis? Do they gamble that the market will slow? Or do they take control and move first? This is where franchises define themselves in moments of uncertainty. And here's what makes it fascinating. The league expectation is leaning toward Steelers or retirement, not Vikings. Not a surprise team. Steelers or walk away. If that holds true, the odds favor continuity in the Steel City. But until the decision is official, everything remains fluid. So now I turn it back to you. If you're in the front office and mid-March arrives without a firm commitment, do you keep waiting for Aaron Rodgers, or do you immediately pivot to Malik Willis and secure your future? Because here's where the long-term chess match really comes into focus. This isn't just about 2026, it's about 2027, 2028, and the direction of the franchise in a conference that refuses to slow down. Look at the AFC landscape. Elite quarterback play is the standard, not the exception. If the Steelers believe they are close, if they believe the roster is competitive enough right now, then bringing back Aaron Rodgers for another season makes logical sense. You're maximizing a window. You're betting that year 2 familiarity sharpens execution. You're trusting that continuity trims down the growing pains that naturally come with a first year in any system. And remember what Rodgers emphasized, in a first-year offense, there are always adjustments. Timing, communication, subtle details in route depth, protection checks. Those take time. He referenced how his second year in a system previously led to a significant jump in performance. That's not just nostalgia. That's experience talking. If Pittsburgh believes that jump is realistic, then bringing him back isn't just a sentimental decision, it's strategic. But here's the counterweight. Rodgers is 43. Even if he plays well, you're still on borrowed time. At some point, the transition must happen. And that's where the Malik Willis conversation becomes so compelling. You're not paying for a finished product, you're paying for traits, athleticism, arm strength, playmaking upside. In a quarterback market starving for youth and potential, those traits get expensive fast, and if the Steelers structure the deal properly, heavy guarantees in year 1, flexibility in year 2, it becomes a calculated swing rather than a reckless gamble. The cap hit might look large on paper, but relative to the quarterback market, it's not top-tier money. It's mid-tier starter money with upside attached. Then you zoom out even further. If Rodgers returns and plays well, the Steelers can draft and develop behind him quietly. No pressure, no chaos. If Willis arrives and succeeds, you've potentially solved the position for years. If neither scenario materializes and you end up with a bridge veteran, you're likely signaling a more aggressive draft approach in 2026 or 2027. That's the reality of this moment. The Steelers are standing at a crossroads between short-term stability and long-term projection. There's also a psychological factor here. The locker room stability matters. Veterans rally differently when they know who their quarterback is. Offensive preparation changes when timing and familiarity exist. Even defensive morale is influenced by offensive consistency. This decision echoes through the entire building. And let's not ignore something else. The Steelers have been deliberate in messaging. They've made it clear this won't drag on indefinitely. That statement alone suggests internal planning is already mapped out. There is a date circled. There is a contingency chart prepared. This isn't improvisation. It's structured patience. But patience has limits. If free agency opens and other quarterbacks begin signing, leverage shifts. If Malik Willis receives offers quickly, Pittsburgh cannot assume the market will wait. If Minnesota makes a move elsewhere, that might quietly narrow Rodgers' choices. Every signing across the league affects the leverage dynamic, so the tension builds toward mid-March. If Rodgers announces he's back, the narrative becomes about finishing what was started. If he retires, the Steelers pivot immediately into the next era. If he wavers, that's where things get truly complicated. And that's why this is one of the most pivotal off-seasons in recent Steelers history. Not because of drama, but because of trajectory. The next quarterback decision sets the tone for the next 3 years. So let me ask you this, not emotionally, but strategically. Do you prioritize